We're live.
Welcome to No Direction, episode 92. We are the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Costello Jr.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
We are joined by the czar of the Pathfinder role-playing game. He sits atop a throne of hardcovers looking down on his kingdom. Czars have kingdoms, right?
Sure, we'll go with that.
With pirate loot cackling at his side like a card-based Salacious Crumb.
That's very true, actually, yeah. Hey there, guys.
How are you doing today, Jason?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. It's a fine Wednesday evening here in Seattle.
That's good. Well, for anyone that's watching us live, we will be covering the Advanced Class Guide, the Monster Codex, the Strategy Guide, a little bit of Pathfinder Unchained, and we'll be wrapping up talking about Pirate Loot, Jason's new Kickstarter, his card game Kickstarter. So if you have any questions about any of those, you can let us know in the comments section. And Jason, we will start with the Advanced Class Guide, but it has to be said, you were very explicit. You went into a lot of details the last time you were on the show about the Advanced Class Guide. We've had the PaizoCon and the Gen Con seminars covering it. So we know which class is or isn't the sneakiest sneaker in the Sneakerverse, etc.
Oh, God. That just won't die. I'm going to punish Mark so heavily for that.
There seems to have been a theme of punishing Mark at every panel at Gen Con. How is Ultimate Peasant coming?
He's the new guy, so, you know, if we've got to punish somebody, he's top of the list.
I could have sworn it was Steven that came up with the sneakiest sneaker in the Sneakerverse.
He was part of it, but he's got a lot more seniority, so the blame rolls straight downhill. Logan is weaving and dodging between the two of them, avoiding my ire entirely.
I picture Logan being Wraith-like between the design team and the development team.
Yeah, he's sneaky, that one. Wait!
So, assuming there is anyone who doesn't own this book yet or possibly hasn't heard of the Advanced Class Guide, why don't you sub it up again?
Well, the Advanced Class Guide is our brand new core rulebook. There it is. Look at that. It's a beautiful adventure path. I mean, it's a gorgeous hardcover book. It includes 10 brand new hybrid classes, each one of which draws from a pair of parent classes to find its inspiration. So, like the Magus is a blend of wizard and fighter, this book is filled with classes that take kind of two of iconic classes that kind of want to play together but currently don't, and melds them together in a way that they function more smoothly. So, you know, if you want to play your cleric fighter, we have the War Priest, which takes some elements of the cleric, some elements of the fighter, and blends them together in a way that makes them work together as one unified class theme. And there's 10 of these in the book, from, you know, the Blood Rager, you know, which is Barbarian and Sorcerer, to what we call the Barbarian, the Scald, which mixes Bard and Barbarian. Boy, thanks. Killed that joke. You know, so the Arcanist mixes Sorcerer and Wizard. The Investigator mixes Alchemist and Rogue. So, yeah, the book has 10 of these classes. They've all been received very well. You know, in addition, it's got feats and spells and magic items to make all of the classes work. It kind of gives them all the bits and pieces they need to be a fully functioning member of Pathfinder. And it also includes a wide variety of new archetypes. There's at least one page of archetypes for every class in the game, to kind of let them play with some of the new features that appear in this book. So really, this is a great addition to your table. You know, it's just the kind of book that allows the people who have always been the tinkerers, the people who wanted to play multi-class characters, this gives them kind of that perfect option if their concept happens to fall within the 10 that we think. So yeah, that's the Advanced Class Guide. It sold like gangbusters at Gen Con. It's shipped out to subscribers already. It should be in stores. It's basically everywhere. You're probably sitting on one right now, just kind of, you know, staring at it. So, yeah.
Well, it does keep my chair from wobbling.
That's nice. Yeah, thanks.
I had a funny moment at Gen Con on the Thursday night. I was playing in the special, and there was a Scald at the table, a Brawler, a Blood Rager, and a Swashbuckler. But it was the first day that the book was available, so only one of us had the PDF. And so all through the night, we were just passing the PDF back and forth and being like, oh, that's what I do now? That's amazing. My class is so much better.
Yeah, the classes went through a lot of revision from the second version of the playtest to final. Many of them are very close, but we did some very tight tweaking to kind of make them fit and kind of get the power level to where we wanted. Um, you know, for many of the classes that meant giving them a little more. There was a few where we took a little bit away, which wasn't very popular, but needed to happen. It's the danger of doing playtests, I guess. And but in the end, we're very happy with how these classes came out. We think they're a good addition to the game.
Well, which one is the one that had the most revisions?
Well, from its initial form, the Arcanist is basically an entirely different class. From its initial playtest version to what actually came out in the book, it almost looks nothing like itself. The spellcasting remained the same, but basically everything else in that class changed. We really wanted to kind of take it in a more dynamic fashion. The playtesters told us what we presented initially wasn't working. And we really just kind of went back to the drawing board on some pieces of it and kind of redefined its role in the game and kind of came up with a better niche for it. And that led us down different directions for all of its abilities. So really, from its initial form to its final form, it's a very different class.
Now, how did the designing of the archetypes go while you were still playtesting and kind of perfecting the base classes?
Delicately. It's always a challenge, right? We're doing a playtest, we're developing other parts of the book. Fortunately, we did have some time after the playtest had concluded, so it really just became kind of a crunch time for us, where we were finishing up our decisions on all the classes. Much of that was happening during the playtest, and then after that, it was just making sure everything else in the book meshed with those pieces. So it was a challenge, but that's why they pay us the big bucks.
Let's say somebody is getting into the game, like right now, they pick up their core rulebook, their first bestiary, and then they're looking at the advanced class guide. Like, how long do you have to play Pathfinder before you're ready for this book?
You're really ready for it right away. I mean, it's called the advanced class guide because some of the classes are a little bit more complicated, but some of them are actually very simple and easy to play. I mean, if you look at a class like the Slayer, it's not really that complicated of a class as a concept. I mean, it pretty much plays straight. There are a few that are a little bit more complicated. I wouldn't exactly recommend an Arcanist to a brand new character. It's got some complicated concepts in it. Just trying to figure out what spells you have each day and which ones are the best for your current needs. Some of the other ones have some trickier bits in it. The Investigator's a little complicated here and there. Swashbuckler, but a lot of them are very straightforward, and they're built that way by design. The advanced class part really kind of refers more to the amalgam concepts that we were playing around with in this book, and those that have been around for a while might see them as kind of a step up in terms of their initial complexity, but I think most players can pick them up pretty quickly.
Now, I've heard some people criticize the feat as just base or just greater versions of the feats, but having read through it, there's a lot of really cool things kind of mixed in there. So how did you balance the needs of all these new classes with also providing cool new toys for them?
Well, generally speaking, whenever we're doing a feature chapter, we start out by building that kind of basic skeleton of what does this book need for the classes and features in it to work. And those kind of get top priority. We make sure those are in there because without them, these classes are going to have some holes and some missing pieces for those who want them. And then whenever we have space left over, we just kind of open it up to our freelancers and to us as designers to kind of go, what sort of cool things are we still missing in the game that we think people should be able to do? And that's pretty much the impetus of it, to be honest. It's a relatively straightforward process. We just kind of see how much space we have left, and then we just run with it.
Now, I've been playing a brawler, and I can imagine that adds a new challenge to designing combat feats, because when you're making prerequisites, if you're making a situational feat, technically the brawler could always have the right feat for the right situation.
Yeah, but that's kind of by design, right? We wanted to make a class that kind of was that multi-tool for those sorts of feats, and the brawler kind of fits that role rather well.
You're the Swiss Army puncher.
What was that?
I said he's the Swiss Army puncher.
That's right, yeah.
I do want to remind our audience that we are live and we are taking questions from the audience. If you have a question for us or Jason while he's on the show, just leave it in the YouTube comments, and we'll be periodically going through those and throughout the entire show.
Sorry, Perm, we may have just glitched. Am I off?
You are not off. You're still
I see both of you.
here.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So, Jason, usually almost right away when a new hardcover comes out, you start getting the feedback and you start getting people like, why didn't you do this obvious thing from my point of view? Were there any surprises with the Advanced Class Guide?
Yeah, there was one in particular that kind of threw us a little bit. Well, actually, there was a few little minor things that we're looking at correcting. It happens with every book. We're so focused on getting all these pieces put together and all the parts of the class assembled that we overlook something kind of obvious. The fact that the swashbuckler can't use the rapier properly with its class features is kind of a bug, and we've got some routes to fix that. And we actually have a feat in ACG Origins, which is coming out, which addresses it directly. It primarily has to do with a feat in the book that seems like something a swashbuckler should be able to take, but it was actually designed for an entirely different purpose, and it's just one of those things that we looked at afterwards and went, oh, oops, we should fix that. There was another one, too, that we're going to probably errata relatively soon. The Skald can't use the horn that's in his art, because a horn is a wind instrument, and we didn't give wind instruments to Skalds, so we're looking at doing a patch for that. It was one of those just kind of the art was staring us in the face the entire time, and we just didn't put two and two together. It's the dangers of this job. And it doesn't help that, generally speaking, we don't see the art with the text until nearly the end of the book. Little things like that. I mean, they're big to the people playing them, and we totally get that, and we want to fix them as soon as we can. But mistakes happen. They're big books filled with a lot of rules. So, we try to do our best. We're a pretty good team on that front. But little things will slip through. So.
Now, since you've noticed these, is this errata that's going to be hitting soon, or are you going to wait for a new print run?
Some of them we might do sooner rather than later, but normally we wait till a new print run, but we've kind of loosened up on that a little bit as needed to fix kind of irritants, especially when it comes to like the fact that the Skald is an iconic. And that iconic should have, Pathfinder Society pre-generated character, and the pre-generated character can't use his horn. That seems a little odd to us. So that might be something we fix sooner rather than later, just to kind of solve that problem. I know it's on our agenda. I think we're going to get to it soon. We've got some kind of bigger fish in our frying pan right now that we need to get out of the way, but we're on it.
And are the campaign setting lines and the companion lines, is that an opportunity to patch up a book like this?
Well, sometimes it is. It's not really the intent of those books by any means. I mean, generally speaking, the rules team doesn't have a lot to do with those books. We'll get past some of the rules elements. In the case of ACG Origins, it is tied directly to this book, so we saw it as an opportunity to just put in a little something to patch up something that we saw as an inequity. But normally, no. No, normally we just kind of lump it and make our changes in our books, and that's fine. We own up our mistakes. We're only human.
How would you rate the? Go ahead, Perm.
Oh, I was going to transition. I was going to go. Speaking of things that are better sooner than later, talk to you about is a book that's been on my wish list for years and years and years, and then is the Monster Codex. Now, for what that title implies, can you give it the 30-second elevator pitch?
Sure. So, Monster Codex is a 256-page book that takes 20 iconic Pathfinder monsters and gives you kind of a full treatment for them. It gives you more information on their ecology. It gives you 2 new pages of rules and mechanics to go with them, and then it proceeds to give you, I believe it's 10 pages of new stat blocks for that monster. So, for example, there's a section in there on Drow. So, if you want to run Drow in your game, you just signed up for a lot of work. The monster or the bestiary only contains 2 Drow stat blocks, and obviously, if you're running a whole adventure featuring Drow, you now have a bunch of stat blocks to create. Well, Monster Codex is here to kind of solve that problem. The goal is to kind of give you stat blocks across the spectrum and allow you to build the encounters you want to build with a minimal amount of work. And it does that for 20 different monsters, from goblins and gnolls and orcs and ogres to hill giants and frost giants and even vampires. So the book has a wide selection of monsters in it. 20 is a lot. And in addition, in the back, and I'm really excited about this, I'm not sure I've mentioned this to anybody yet. In the back are 11 micro class templates. They're like simple templates, but for classes. So if you want to have a, owlbear cleric, let's just go with that. You can put the cleric template on it, and now all of a sudden it has limited cleric spells and powers, and it kind of fits the role without having to add 6 class levels to it. And there's one of those for the 11 core classes.
That is the best thing you've ever said.
Yeah, totally looking forward to that. I heard about that, but I was unsure if that was this book or an Unchained feature, because it sounded in both.
It's in Monster Codex. I personally am looking forward to making an Adi Yug Barbarian.
I just want to make everything clerics.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of giants in the list of monsters that are going to be included. Did Giant Slayer play into the Monster Codex's design at all?
Not really. Primarily because Monster Codex has been in design now for almost a year, and Giant Slayer kind of came about a little after that. So that doesn't mean they won't make good use of it. But really, that was something we just decided. This is something that the game could need. We also wanted to ensure that the book had some higher CR monsters in it. If it was all bugbears and goblins and orcs and lizard folk, they'd all be pretty low CR. Because we didn't want to have, each one go all the way up to CR 20. Obviously, we don't have the pages for that. And for some monsters, it's kind of, I wouldn't say inappropriate, but less useful. Orc starting out at, CR 1/2, throwing a CR 20 orc is useful, but it's probably not quite as useful as doing like a CR 8 and a CR 10 orc, and maybe even a CR 11 or 12 orc. But beyond that, you start getting into the realm of, wow, this is a really powerful orc. Whereas with Fire Giants or something, the Fire Giant King, I believe, is CR 21 or 22, which is high, but not terribly higher than the normal Fire Giant CR. So, that was kind of driving some of our decision-making on that.
When you're designing the whole hierarchy of a specific monster, how do you decide that? How do you decide that fire giants have kings versus goblins have whatever they have?
They have vulture riders for one thing, and those guys.
Cool.
Yeah, they're riding around on vultures. I believe that's even an alchemist too. It's a real mess. No, is it the cavalier? I don't remember. I'd have to double check. God, I wish I had brought the book home with me. We have a couple copies floating around the office. I showed one off at Dragon Con this past weekend. Basically, it just depends on the monster, So fire giants are very lawful, so them having kings and queens made sense. Goblins are totally chaotic, so their boss is just a strong arm, or I think he's a chieftain or something like that. So it's just it depends on the monster. There's a couple oddballs in there. The vampire is kind of an oddball. There's a bunch of vampire stat blocks, but there's also a couple other weird stat blocks in there, like his living servants that take care of his mansion while he's asleep. I think that's this weird, creepy halfling butler. The book's filled with a lot of fun stuff like that, and a lot of inspiration and ideas, and includes tips on how to build new encounters with these guys. And each one also contains, well, almost all of them, contain a brand new monster that is kind of like a pet or a servant of that type.
Okay, you've kind of got my brain I'm still stuck on the goblin riding a vulture.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I know you're kind of into miniature games as well. Did you kind of take a miniature game approach to it, saying, like, what would flesh out a full army?
To some extent. I mean, it really was just kind of like, what's its base CR, and we don't want to go much above, about 10 above its base CR, roughly. There are exceptions, but that was kind of our rough guideline for designing them. So many of the monsters are between, CR 1 and about CR 12 or 13. And then beyond that, it starts getting a bit thinner, but there's still plenty that are up there. So the book is good for kind of, campaigns of any level. Obviously, we recognize that most campaigns are in the 1 to 12, 13, 14 range, especially with our adventure paths. So we kind of focus a lot of our efforts in that direction.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed in all the bestiaries is a lot of the monsters have different flavor space, but often have very similar rule space, or can be confusing, such as the difference between hobgoblins and orcs, or the difference between goblins and hobgoblins. A lot of hobgoblins here. So how did you use this book and the rules space to sort of flesh out the differences between things that can be awful similar?
Well, we kind of just did exactly that, right? So, I mean, we took a lot of our monsters that do live in a similar space and kind of gave them some rules to emphasize kind of the directions they go. So, bugbears in our world are very much about fear. And they can, like, smell it in people, and they like to hunt and stalk people, and they're kind of the monster that goes bump in the night. So when it came time to design rules elements for them, we gave them new rules elements that kind of emphasize and play out that feature. When it came to kobolds, we played around with the fact that they come in colors and they're regimented and things like that. So, generally speaking, we just looked for the hook that does make them unique and actually gave them mechanics and pieces to actually work with that, as opposed to just kind of saying, this is how they are. Stat-wise, it's basically just a hairy orc. So I mean that's basically it. I mean there wasn't really much more in depth to it than that.
You've already kind of implied that the goblin vulture rider might be an alchemist or a cavalier, so I guess that means you're not going to stick to the core rulebook only?
No. The book does use stuff from the Advanced Player's Guide, and I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on this. There might be one or two ACG stat blocks in there. I can't 100% confirm that. We may not have done that. I'm just not sure. Now I really wish I would have brought it home.
But no, if you go back to the office, we can wait for you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It'll only take me about an hour and a half. Everybody just hang on. You can stare at my wall.
Cool wall.
Yeah, nice.
That is the beginner box cover.
Is that the original paint?
Yep.
Awesome. Now, a lot of this sounding, especially the monsters you mentioned, ties into a lot of the Revisited line, and especially Classic Monsters Revisited, one of my favorite early books you guys put out. Were those books an inspiration for the book, or will we be seeing a lot of material or crossover there?
I think we drew some inspiration from it. I mean, clearly, like, those books did help define some of these monsters, as opposed to just them being a stat block. So when it came time for us to build this book, I think we drew upon those as inspiration, but I don't think we copied large portions of them wholesale at all. Mostly new material. Yeah.
New material, but it's obviously going to be setting neutral, but I guess it would be compatible with how they've been portrayed in the Pathfinder campaign setting lines?
Of course. I mean, that's always our goal, is to make sure that our although setting neutral, it is obviously compatible with our world and what we're doing in all of our other lines. So, I mean, that's always that's paramount to many of our design decisions.
You mentioned vampires earlier, and that one just sounds like a particular challenge because it's already a template, and so you've got to choose a race to apply the template to, and then you're choosing a class, and it seems like that would have been a harder design than some of the other monsters included.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we were close to cutting it a number of times, but I kept fighting for it because it was just too much fun to kind of pass up. When you want to put a vampire in your game, really you have a stat block in the book, otherwise you've got a lot of legwork to do, and doing that legwork for people just seemed like the right call. So, yeah, I mean, it was a bit more of a challenge. That section was certainly harder than, say, kobolds. But, grand total, it's, I think 14 or 16 pages. I'd have to double check. And, that's not that big of a challenge, really, in the grand scheme of things.
I know we just finished Carrion Crown, and Book 5 really went into vampire culture. We could have used a few more stat blocks if we really wanted to explore that whole city.
Yeah, well, Monster Codex certainly has you covered.
Some of the races are not quite as iconic as some of the other ones. Sorry, not races, but the monsters that made the cut. What went into the selection process?
Well, basically, we did a very large list of monsters, and we kind of looked at them and said, all right, well, what monsters do people typically apply stat blocks to? You know, and that was kind of the basis for our list. And then we still had much more than 20 at that point. And then we just started talking about, okay, well, what are the needs of various campaigns? So we need to make sure we have one race that's aquatic at the very least. You know, we need to make sure that they fit in different terrains, that they meet different CR goals. So in some cases, that meant that a monster that maybe wasn't quite as iconic as, say, goblins made the cut. Now, that said, goblins still made the cut, right? You know, there were some that are just no-brainers. You know, trolls and, you know, ogres, obviously, you know, have a place in this book. So it is a lot of humanoids, because obviously we're dealing with stat blocks that just deal with class levels. So it's a lot of humanoids kind of across the spectrum. As a matter of fact, it's almost all humanoids. There's a couple weirdos in there, but yeah.
Okay. And I imagine this is also going to get a pawn set.
You know, you'd have to ask Mona about that. I believe that is the plan, but don't quote me on that. I think they're looking at ways to possibly do it, but it's a little trickier than our normal bestiary because it's not quite as big, and there is a lot of really, really great art in here, though. So, you know, if Eric can find a way, I'm sure we'll get a pawn set of it. But you know, it's not always that cut and dry.
How does the amount of art compare to the NPC Codex?
A little less in the way of character art, because there are sections of this book that are not just more stat blocks, right? There are sections that are rules elements, and there's sections that are ecology. So there's a little less in that front. So I mean that's basically the difference. So yeah, I mean, you know, if Monster Codex has, or sorry, if NPC Codex has 100%, this maybe has 85 or something. So it's close, but it's not quite the same. So I think there might be an issue there. I'm honestly not 100% sure. The pods line tends to happen without me ever having to touch it, which is good, because I have a lot of big rule books to do.
I think one of the reasons that all four of the bestiaries feel like they're really important books is because receiving a non-bestiary book of adversaries.
I missed part of that. You kind of broke up on me. Can you give me a bit of that again?
Sure. I was just saying that as great as all the bestiaries are, some of the more interesting adversary books are the non-bestiaries. So this and NPC Codex. I'm just wondering what goes into conceptualizing something like the Monster Codex.
Well, really, for us, it's just kind of trying to identify need. That was the same with the NPC Codex as well. Just kind of going, how can we make a GM's job easier? You know, we give you plenty of monsters. I mean, you have 4 bestiaries full of monsters at this point. Now, not that you couldn't always use more monsters, but we kind of ask ourselves, okay, what else could a GM use that would make their job easier? NPC stat blocks, that would really help. Let's do a book of those. Oh, well, we did that. Okay, but there are no monster stat blocks. Well, let's do a book of those. So, I mean, that's kind of where we get this, is that we're constantly trying to find ways to make the GM's job easier, to make everybody's job easier at the table. And, you know, a book like Monster Codex really kind of fits that niche rather well. I'm super excited. The moment it went to the print, I printed out a couple sections of it for my home game, just to make my life easier, because I have a game I run every Monday night in which I punish Eric, Mona, and some other of my local friends. You know, and I really needed that drow section. So, you know, I'm good now. It's all set.
Actually, that reminds me of a comment Eric Mona made at the Emerald Spire All-Star panel at PaizoCon, just talking about he chose the Lich from the bestiary to save space. So yeah. You're talking about GMs and stuff, but I think the adventure writers would also appreciate being able to refer to a single page in a Monster Codex instead of a huge stat block.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a time saver for them, too, and a space saver. Especially when you start getting into higher level adventures, putting in a lot of large stat blocks will really eat up a lot of your page count. That's a side that most people never really realize, but one of the things we're always kind of juggling is, can we fit everything into the word space we have allotted? And that's easier said than done. It's a surprising challenge sometimes. And sometimes you end up with the opposite problem, where you've written this great idea and you've got 12 pages to put it in and it only fills up 8. You know, in which case, you know, you end up writing a lot of box text. If you ever wonder why those get wordy, there's your answer. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how that plays.
Now we have a question from the audience from Alexander Agunas. He asks, "Hey Jason, care to share your opinions on the Divine Protection feat from ACG?"
Oh, geez. Off the top of my head, unless it was read out loud to me, I'm having spacey issues on recalling exactly what every feat in that book does. I'm still in the process of memorizing them all.
You gain a bonus equal to your charisma modifier on all saving throws. If your charisma modifier is already applied as a bonus, such as the Divine Grace class feature, you gain a +1 bonus on all saves instead.
Sure. I believe it has a prerequisite that's pretty tough, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Charisma 13, Knowledge Religion 5 ranks, ability to cast second level Divide spells, Blessings, Domains, or Mystery class feature.
Sure. I mean, yeah, is it a good feat? Yes, it's certainly a very good feat. Anything kind of to make charisma a better ability score for some people sometimes is of value. It's like, unless you're a paladin, that's a dump stat for just about everybody. Yeah, I mean, is it a good feat? Yeah, certainly, but it does come with some pretty hefty prerequisites, so I think I'm okay with it. I mean, we'll let it play. It's one of those things where that's the sort of feat that we kind of push the envelope on of what a feat can do. We'll take a look at it as time goes on. Those are a part of the book that generally don't get playtested with the public, at least. So every once in a while we get caught off guard, but I think it's probably going to be okay. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. At Pathfinder Society, if I sit down at a table and everybody has it, I suppose I'll know.
Couple more questions from the audience. Avenka Thelma asks, will there be an NPC Codex 2 with the new classes from the ACG?
I'll never say never. Right now it's not on our agenda, but, we only plan about a year and a half out, so we're looking at, next fall's book already, and that's not currently what we're planning on doing. So, yeah, I'll never say never. It's a book that I think makes sense. I mean, if you were to plot things out, it's certainly a book that seems like something we might do.
Listener Christopher Kimball also it's more of a comment. He says the Advanced Dungeons Master's Guide would, I guess you can't call it that, would make Magion's job easier! But I guess that's what the Game Mastery Guide was.
Yeah, I mean the Game Mastery Guide came out very early on in our life cycle and was an attempt to kind of give you a ton of information about how to run games. I think that book does a pretty decent job of that, and actually has the first seeds of what would become the NPC Codex in it with its stat blocks. So yeah, I mean, I would investigate that book. I'm not sure that we have a terribly large amount of additional content to say on that end. I think we could possibly make another book out of it, but I'm not sure that that's high on our agenda right now.
Well, I've always thought of Ultimate Campaign as a bit of a follow-up to the Game Mastery Guide.
Yes, to some extent. It kind of gives you more options and directions to take your game, but I'm not sure that it just sits and gives you advice on how to, run a better game. It's really more about subsystems to kind of enhance your campaign as a whole.
We're going to move on to the strategy guide, but if anyone that is listening live still has questions about the Monster Codex or the Advanced Class Guide, feel free to bring them on. Now, Jason, about the strategy guide, I heard anyone who touched a copy was cursed with immutable strategic thinking. Is this why the book was late?
Well, the book was actually late primarily just because we wanted to get it right. A book like this is a tricky beast, and the name's a little bit of a misnomer. It's not actually designed to teach you the way to beat Pathfinder. Its job is really there to teach newer players kind of some of the basics, tricks and strategies about how to make an effective character, how to play the game, and kind of unlock the what is a rather intimidating core rulebook. The story I always tell everybody is like, welcome, you've decided to play Pathfinder with me and my group. Fantastic. Why don't you sit down? We're going to weave a story of fantastic adventure where heroes fight monsters and win treasure and fame. First, read this 576-page book. And typically people just kind of stare at you like, I don't want to do that. So the strategy guide is really there to kind of help walk you through what is a very intimidating book and kind of help you navigate it, to make a good character, to understand the basics of combat, and kind of walk you through it. If the core rulebook is a very complicated lock that we all learn to pick over a period of time, this is just a key. It's like, here, go, right? So that's really kind of what the strategy guide is there to do. It was a tricky book to pull off. We wanted to make sure we had it exactly right, and that wasn't that simple. So, that's kind of where we went with it.
Now, the latest member of the design team was notorious for his, well, maybe notorious isn't the great word, but he was famous for his class guides when he was a lowly board member named Rogue Eidolon. Was he hired in time to influence the strategy guide?
No, not really. He started after that. That book was so deep in process that I didn't want to drag him into it. Typically, once a book has passed a certain threshold, it's counterproductive to bring a new person in and be like, here, learn all of this. The amount of time that takes is just not productive. So really, he kind of came in at the end cycle of it. And like I said, it's not really about making an optimized character. We actually think that for some players, if that's something they want, that's kind of half the fun, and telling them that is kind of defeats the purpose to some extent. And to be honest, we'll just take endless flack over it, because no matter what we do, no one will agree with us. There will always be people who are like, well, you could have taken this feat and that feat and this feat and that spell and this magic item. And this book really just looks at the core rulebook, which would handicap us from the outset, right? Because there's a lot of really great options in our other books, and we weren't going to start referencing those because for a new player, that's really bewildering. So really, we just kind of focused on the core rulebook and how to build a character that at least functions based on what you want the character to do, and can be a productive party member without, having to reference 14 other books or, picking up things that you don't need. So that's really kind of what the strategy guide is there for. And it's a beautiful book. It was a real struggle to get out the doors, but once we did, it really does look great, and we're looking forward to getting it out for people.
One of the things that I really liked about the beginner box was the layout and stuff. Is the strategy guide going to be in a similar, very visual, very colorful layout?
Absolutely, right. That's another thing that takes time, and we always underestimate it, but it always takes more time than we think. Sarah and her team did a fantastic job making a beautifully laid out book. It's got a lot of art. It's got a lot of graphics. It's got a lot of handy flow charts and toolbars and things like that. All that stuff takes time, and that was another reason why it got a little delayed. Is that we just wanted to make sure it looked as good as it could, because for a new player, having something that's visually interesting will help keep them engaged. So.
Now let's say I've got Grog tattooed on one hand and Nard on the other hand, and I've got every Pathfinder role-playing game book, and I've got 50 years of experience. In panels, you seem to be implying that strategy guide might not be for me, but surely there's some way you can sell me on this book.
Sure. Well, now you don't have to teach the new guy all of your tricks. He can learn for himself. That's kind of one of our goals with this, is that you don't have to have someone at the table holding someone's hand. With the strategy guide, they can learn it at their own pace, and they can kind of pick it up as needed. So this kind of helps your table run a little bit more smoothly. They can look things up on their own. It's got its own index. It can walk you through various rules and concepts without you necessarily having to, bother the guy next to you to figure out, hey, what feat should I take at this level? Hey, should I cast this spell or not? So, that's kind of its aim.
Should I get Grognard tattooed on my knuckles?
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, gosh. No.
So, just to let our listeners know, we've got Jason for a little less than 10 minutes now, so we'll kind of quickly go through Pathfinder Unchained, but I do want to talk to you about Pirate Loot.
I can give you another 5 or 10, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Well, then, briefly talking about Pathfinder Unchained, we've already got 2 questions from the audience about it. Avenka Thalma wants to know, will it override the core rules, or will it be complementary?
Unchained, okay. Right, we moved on to Unchained?
Yeah, sorry, I should have made that a little clearer.
Yeah, no worries.
How about Unchained?
So, Pathfinder Unchained is really just an opportunity for the design team to kind of go crazy and do some of the things that we would love to do, but we kind of can't. There are certain elements of the game that are just kind of set in stone, and we can't just go and change them without altering some of the underpinnings that a lot of other things are built off of. So when it comes to whether or not this just is a replacement for some things, in some cases, yes, right? So one of the things that's in this book is a change to the way the action economy system works. In the core rulebook, there's move actions and standard actions and full round actions and swift actions and immediate actions and free actions and attacks of opportunity and non-actions, and yeah, there's just too many actions. A more simplified, streamlined system of that would make everybody's life a little easier, but it's not something we can just swap out in, Ultimate Campaign 2. That is not a confirmation that we are doing Ultimate Campaign 2, by the way. The point is, this book allows us to tinker with some of the underpinnings of the game in kind of a safe environment, because we're saying, hey, most of the stuff in this book is optional, and your GM can decide to use it, can decide not to use it. One of the things we're most excited about in this book is we're taking a look back at 4 of our classes that have already been released, that have been in books for a while now, and just kind of saying, did we do everything we could have done with those? The Barbarian and the Rogue, are they really what we wanted them to be? Are they really powerful enough to kind of hang in there with everybody else? The Monk falls in that same category. On the flip side, is the Summoner just too good? Is it too broken? So we're going to be taking a look at some of these classes and giving them a rebalance and a repolish. Yeah, I know. The Summoner's class. All right, I said it. This just gives us a chance to kind of relook at some of these issues and decide, hey, if we had to do it all over again, what would we do instead? So there's going to be new and interesting things to have to do with spells. There's going to be new and interesting ways of dealing with magic items that aren't just, oh, you found a boring +1 cloak. There's going to be something in this book for kind of everybody. I know we've only mentioned that only 4 classes are getting a rebuild, but all the other classes will find that this book has various systems in it that they could plug into if they want. One of the ones that I'm particularly excited about is a system of fatigue, wherein most of your combat-focused characters can get a pool of fatigue. And that fatigue is something they can use during the fight on their turn to take additional, not actions, but do special things based on what combat feats they have. So combat feats will now come with a fatigue rider that says, it does whatever it does normally, but in addition, you can burn X fatigue on your turn to, say, move an additional 20 feet or something. And as long as you still have fatigue, you can keep taking those actions, but the moment you're out of fatigue in the fight, you're in trouble. And then between fights, you can regain your fatigue over time. And this puts a counter pressure on the spellcasters and whatnot who are constantly going, go, 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 my spell durations are running out. Meanwhile, the combat character is going to be like, hold on just a sec, I need to catch my breath. Whew, that ogre was tough, So there's some fun systems in there. There's some things that we're just kind of being playful with and just kind of being like, that sounds fun, let's see what that looks like. That's kind of the entire thought process behind Unchained.
Now, let's say my GM is a Pathfinder Society GM. Will any of this, do you think, apply?
We're still chatting with them about that. It wouldn't surprise me if we find some way to get some of the classes in, but we'll see. Certainly I doubt we'll be, swapping out the action system for Pathfinder Society, but some of the other bits might make it in. We'll see.
We've got another question. This one's actually a pretty simple question. It's from Kenny7070. He wonders if Pathfinder Unchained will expand upon the words of power system.
No, we're not going back to touch on that, unfortunately. It was something I tinkered with in the early outlining for this book, but I think we're going to leave that dog lie, as it were.
When you were outlining the book, did you ever just try and see, what is the craziest limit I can push?
Yes, yes, clearly. But at the same time, we did hit some barriers that we were like, well, we could replace that, but that would basically mean we would end up spending half the book doing it. And I'm not really sure that's worth it, right? If you go and start tinkering with the base math behind the game, start changing around how the scaling, attack progressions, save progressions, and all that works, it's like, yeah, but now all the monsters are wrong, all the player characters are wrong. No one's ever going to use this system because it would basically require them to rewrite their entire campaign and redo every stat block they run into. And that's not really worth it. So, we kind of played around with some of those as concepts, but in the end we decided to go with some more productive routes. Things that we thought people could actually just kind of pull out and use. So in some cases the systems are a little bit more insular in what they are. That's not always the case. There are some things that are a little wide-ranging, but even then, the last thing we want GMs to do is be like, "Hey, congrats! We decided to introduce this new system that'll make, the game easier to play." Except for the fact you have to redo every stat block you run into. That doesn't really fit the goal. So yeah, that's kind of where we went with that.
What about Pathfinder size, where you replace hit points with push-ups that the player has to do?
That's a great idea. I can't imagine that it's going to be very popular.
Not if the Gen Con tables are to be a judge of it.
I mean, I've heard of stranger ideas.
Now, before you end up setting sail, Jason, there's also another project that you've been working on that we've been seeing pop up on your Facebook feed, and
Far too much.
Really interesting art.
Yeah, I guess you're probably talking about pirate loot now, huh?
Yep. Pirate loot.
So, to be totally clear for the Pathfinder folks at home, this is something that I'm doing on my own. This is not affiliated with Paizo, although I do have their blessing. The Paizo doesn't do card games other than the Pathfinder card game, and I've always wanted to get into card and board game design, and eventually, I took the advice of James Ernst, who gave this to me many years ago. He's like, if you want to make card and board games, do it yourself. So here I am, and I decided to create a card game called Pirate Loot. And, Pirate Loot is a very simple card game for 2 to 4 players. It involves you putting into play a scurvy collection of pirates to kind of get the best crew before all the ships set sail, and steal the loot from the other players. So it's kind of a treacherous, backstabbing sort of game that's designed to be played in about an hour. It's very simple to play. On your turn, you play a card, you resolve its effects, and the play passes around the table. Many of the cards do kind of crazy things, though. They steal cards from other players, they force them to discard, they manipulate hands. So there's a lot of kind of interplay between the cards, but the gameplay itself is actually relatively simple. And it's available now on Kickstarter. If you look for Pirate Loot, you'll find it right away. We're already funded. We're at over 150% funding now, and we're close. We just unlocked our first stretch goal yesterday, which is full art for the game, and we're closing in on the next one, which is 6 bonus cards for everybody at the gunner level and higher. So things are going really well, and I've got a great art team involved in this. Dylan McConis and Scott Kurtz, both of which work on PvP online and Table Titans and some other stuff. Family Man, I think, some other stuff as well. But they're great artists. Their art style is perfect for the game. It's a little lighthearted, but plenty serious enough. And so it's really working out really fantastically well. I have Mary Kolkowski doing my graphic design. She used to be the art director for D&D, and she really knows her stuff. So I've got kind of an all-star team put together to make this game happen, and it's really coming together really fantastically. I'm kind of blown away by the level of support I've gotten thus far.
Now, one of the things I was curious about this game is I was looking at the factions for the pirates, and you've got the gosh, I just blew my mind. You've got like the greedy ones, you've got the brute ones, then you got the lazy ones. When did lazy become a faction?
So yeah, there's four factions. There's brutal, clever, greedy, and lazy. And each one of the pirate factions, because seriously, if you sit around and think about pirates, which I did a lot, because the entire
and did we lose Jason?
This game. What was that? Oh yeah, there we go. I decided to classify the pirates, and each suit of pirate kind of has a different focus. So brutal pirates are all about making people discard pirates in play. They'll murder everybody next to them. The clever pirates are all about manipulating your hand and the deck. The greedy pirates are all about... Wow, look at it go. The greedy pirates are all about stealing people's loot and treasure. And last but not least, the lazy pirates are all about making the game end faster so they can get to the party afterwards. They're literally all about milling the deck so that the game ends faster. So yeah, it's really exciting. I'm having a really good time. As you can see there, we just unlocked our first stretch goal. I'm really excited for the stretch goal that we hit at 40,000. Because at 40,000 we unlock a 5 and 6 player deck. Because right now the game is only suitable for 4 players. Basically, as I mentioned, there's 4 suits. You play with 1 suit for each player in the game. So to go up to 5 and 6, I need 2 additional suits. And we just announced the first of the 5-6 player deck suits, and that's Undead Pirates. And they'll manipulate the discard pile.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I have to say, I've got a good group of people that I could play 4-player games with, but I've got more people that would join me for a 5-player game, so I really hope you're making that, because that, as fun as the game is in its current iteration, having another player in there is something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, me too. And to be honest, right, we're almost to 25,000. That's fantastic. We're not even halfway done with this yet, so I think hitting 40 is a very reasonable goal. To be honest, I've got goals planned all the way up through 60 if this thing goes crazy big. Right now, I'd be very, very happy if we just get to 40, because I'd really love to see that 5-6 player expansion deck.
Now, where did the idea for this game come from?
The name for it is actually kind of a long story. Well, not a very long story, but basically, when I first decided to do this game, it had what was its original name? Booty, but that was not a good name for a game, because all I would get would be snickering. And I kind of just played around with names, just endlessly, trying to find one that no one was currently using. Because as it turns out, when you look for pirate, loot, booty, plunder, treasure, almost every combination has been used. And I settled on pirate loot for one very good reason. Because if pirate loot is very, very, very popular, I could do, say, ninja loot later or something like that. Now, this is the first time I've ever mentioned this publicly. But if it becomes something that people really like, I could design additional expansions for it that allow you to mix pirates and ninjas, or pirates and cowboys, or pirates and robots. And the game is very specifically designed so that you can play with multiple different suits. All the backs will be neutral so that you can mix them all together, and they'll just play. So we'll see how it goes. Right now, I know that's big picture planning. That's kind of putting the cart before the horse, but I like to expect a modest success, but plan for bigger things. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Now, you've got a pretty moderate buy-in to get the deck at $20, and then at $35, you start getting the stretch goals. What are some of the other interesting pledge levels you've got? I see a pirate version of you on here.
So yeah, at $20 you just get the base game. At $35 you get the base game plus every stretch goal we unlock, and then it starts getting crazy at some of the higher levels. So at $50 you get a signed book plate, and you get playtest access, and you're going to help us on that end. At $100 you get twice as many copies of the game and all the expansions, and you get playtest copies of the expansion decks we unlock. And then it starts getting really crazy for people who really want to, help us out. So at $200, you can work with me to design a loot card that will appear in every copy of the game. I happen to know that there's somebody out there who I was chatting with at Dragon Con who really wants to make a bacon loot card. Yeah, because everybody likes bacon, even pirates. But then at $300, and these are all sold out. They're all gone already, but there is a $500 and $700 level of this. You can actually have yourself made into one of the pirates in the deck. So they did a sample of me being turned into a pirate, which I actually think turned out really, really great. And I'm probably going to put myself in the lazy suit because I am of a yellow color scheme. But there's the $300 level was we make you one of the lesser crew in the deck. At $500, you get made into a bosun or a quartermaster. And then for $700, we make you into one of the 4 captains that appears in the deck. And we did get somebody to grab one of those, so we're really excited about that. And then there's the kind of crazy, like, you want me to run the game for you? I'll come run the game for you at $1,000. So, no takers yet, but, that's all cool. All cool. I don't know if, it's like, why pay for it? I give it away for free at cons all the time, I guess. So.
You're not selling the $1,000 level by saying that.
I know. I'm terrible. I'm new here. I don't know. I'm not
nobody's
sales.
I'm a $1,000 level either.
Yeah.
All right.
What I find strange is I've got a couple of pirate board games, and none of them are whimsical. They're all like serious piratey on the high seas and trading and whatnot. But this one actually looks like it's just fun to be a pirate.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted it to be kind of this cutthroat, funny pirate game where, you play cards and end up cursing at each other, and, you just end up kind of betraying all of your friends and stealing all of their stuff, and it all happens so quickly and it's so light that no one really gets angry because the games take, each round of the game takes 15, 20 minutes to play, so nobody really gets too bent out of shape if they lose a 15, 20-minute round, and generally most games take 2, 3, or 4 rounds to play. So, in most cases, even if you get really screwed up in one round, you can come back in the next round pretty easily. So, it's meant to be light and poppy, and that's really why I went with Scott Kurtz and Dylan McConis's art, because they kind of match that perfectly.
Well, we've unfortunately run out of time with you, Jason. Is there anything you'd like? Huh?
I said, look at that, we have. You're right.
Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to shout out or anything you'd like to mention before we let you go?
No, I think we covered pretty much anything. Pirate Loot runs until 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on September 19th, which happens to be International Talk Like a Pirate Day. Yeah. I'm sure I did not do that intentionally. And, I'm about to run out tonight to run some demos at a board game night here in my neck of the woods. So I'll be doing more of these as we go along. So if you're in the Seattle area, keep an eye out. And, I'd love to show you the game.
Are you going to be doing any more cons? Like if somebody sees you at, I don't know, New York Comic Con, can they play a game with you?
Oh, I wish I was going to New York Comic Con, but alas not. I don't think I have any conventions between now and the end of the Kickstarter. But obviously after that, I'm going to keep the demo deck on pretty much at all times to show people the game. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I've also had it sent out to a lot of people in a lot of different regions, so there might be people playing it at your local con anyway. I'm trying to get a complete list of those to post online shortly.
Excellent. Well, good luck, Jason. Thank you very much for joining us once again.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure as always.
And we will see you sometime in the future, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys know me. I always turn up.
All right, guys, we will be right back after this with some banter and news.
All right, so Jason, you can just hit the phone-looking button, the red one.
The phone button.
The phone button.
Yep.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right,
Later.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
In the Pathfinder News section, we talk about the latest happenings from Paizo and for the Pathfinder role-playing game. And sometimes when we've got a little bit of flexibility in our schedule, we also just kind of banter a bit about what's on our minds and what's been going on in our home games lately.
Are you hinting that we have some flexibility in their schedule today, Ryan?
We might. Well, let's go through the news we actually have and see just how big the news is now that Gen Con's come and gone.
Yeah, unfortunately, our first bit of news is what's not happening in Pathfinder.
That's true. You may have heard around Gen Con that talk of the Pathfinder Society adventure card game class decks, that they were rushed to the printer and that they had a very limited supply at Gen Con. And unfortunately, the Pathfinder Society Adventure Card Guild, the organized play program for the Pathfinder Society for the adventure card game, really depended on those class decks. So they sold through the amount that they brought to Gen Con, which was not nearly enough to supply all of the gaming stores and whatnot that were interested in these decks. And so, because the decks aren't available for gamers until September 24th, Vic Verts made an announcement that the Adventure Card Guild organized play program will also have to be delayed until September 24th. Now, that does give another month or so to get the word out. I know that I've actually received quite a few people in my area that are interested in the card game and the Adventure Card Guild. So it does give people more time to assess the area. Sorry, it gives venture officers more time to assess the interest in their area and then plan events in the near future because of it. Obviously, that's the silver lining. The people that were really excited about the game, sorry, you're going to have to wait a few more weeks to another month.
Honestly, I really hope that this does start working out very well, because we've talked about before how difficult it is to run Pathfinder and run the card game, and this is a format where I could actually see getting some regular play, because it's really hard to get a group to commit to running a full campaign of Pathfinder Adventure card game. No, I've not even made it to deck 2 yet, after I've tried a few times. So at least this is pick up play scenario idea is a lot more appealing, and will probably actually be easier to get games together for.
And I do know some people that are really gung-ho for the Adventure Card game. So the Adventure Card Guild, I don't see having any problem succeeding. I just think that, well, anyway, it's a small delay in the long run of it. I know that when there's a printing error in something, that it could actually delay things by months. And in this case, no, things seem to be under control. It's a small delay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was our big news, Param.
Well, the other important thing to remind our listeners of is, for those of you interested in Pathfinder Online, please make sure your accounts are in order and everything is good to go. And you might want to study up on the game and how it runs, and especially since this is not your typical fantasy online game at all. Not in a bad way, but this is a complicated game. This is spreadsheets level complicated. But Pathfinder Online early enrollment, that stuff we pledged for in the Kickstarter, will begin September 15th, which is just under 2 weeks from today. And these characters will not be white. These will be real characters. So the way the game works is that you're going to be accruing experience based on how time spent both online and offline, a la EVE Online. So getting in early, at least getting your character started learning stuff, even if you don't actually play, is going to be important to get in as soon as you can. Now, the early enrollment for the people that signed in for that is September 15th, and then the later, smaller pledge amount will be October 15th for the more open access enrollment after that. If you have not gotten into the game, they are still letting people pledge in, so you can go ahead and pledge if this is something that interests you.
And finally, it's just a fun, light little bit of news. Paizo had its first wedding, as in the Paizo offices. Paizo hosted a wedding for a couple of fans that unfortunately were not able to fly out to their original destination, and so Reverend Editor Ryan Macklin agreed to officiate his first wedding for a couple of Pathfinder enthusiasts. There's pictures going around of the happy couple in front of the giant Galarian map that Paizo has hanging on one of its walls, and it tickles me. I'm glad this happened.
Yeah, but unfortunately, their marriage pledge had to be errated. It'll be in time for the second printing. No, this is cute. I'm definitely glad to see things like this. Pathfinder and Paizo have kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger over the years since we've been covering them. It's a dramatic shift, honestly, when you compare them to some of our early episodes, to how we talk about them today. So it's good to keep being reminded of little things like this, that they're still small, focused, community-minded, and these kind of cute things keep showing up. Also of note that's kind of cute but not directly Pathfinder related is that Jason Bulmahn did do his ALS challenge, the Ice Bucket Challenge, which is cool on its own right, but there's videos of it up on the various Facebook pages associated with Jason Bulmahn. But more importantly, he finally got punched in the face with the gauntlet. at the end of the video. So if you want to see Jason punched in the face with the gauntlet, go look up his ALS video.
I could say, why would anyone want to see that? But it's fun. It's fun to see.
Yeah, definitely.
So apparently, that's it for the news. You've got a little bit of banter that you wanted to cover, though.
Yes. This is not directly Pathfinder related. It is indirectly Pathfinder related. But as we mentioned before, the Dark Dungeons movie has come out. It premiered at Gen Con, and they had copies of it for sale at the Paizo booth. And I finally got to watch it, and it was awesome. I much approve of this. I only purchased it once we confirmed not one red cent of this would go to Jack Chick, who I loathe and despise for very, very, very obvious reasons, and a multitude of them. But this is such a great part of our culture that I am so... It's a very important part of any culture that has featured any sort of animosity or repression, and I know that gamers is the whole concept of gamers and their animosity and repression doesn't compare to any sort of other civil rights situation, but any part of a culture that has gone through being falsely labeled, it's very important for us to take the attacks that they use against us and then make them ours and keep them as part of the history. So that's why it's still important today that Chick track exists and people can read it and can see and understand the history of gaming. And that's also why I really love this movie, because it's so loyal. It is so loyal to that little comic book. Not completely line for line, but very close line for line. But if they did completely line for line, it'd be over with in 5 minutes. But every major point gets hit. And while it is slightly campy, they don't deviate. They play it straight. They play it as straight as they can with the material they were given. The special effects are what we've come to expect from Zombie Orpheus, and you'll see a lot of familiar faces from the Gamers movies when you watch it. And overall, I just strongly recommend that if you can see this movie, go see this movie. You can watch it off their website. I think like $5 to buy it. That's not too awful much. The DVDs are available on Paizo, and I think they were like $10, so it's not a very expensive movie. And I know that on my next game night, I'm going to try to get the game night started a little bit early, and then kick this up on there so we can watch it as a group. We have done that with all the Gamers movies in the past, and I definitely want to do that with this one. Ryan, have you got to see it yet?
I have not. I am baffled that this thing exists. I'll be honest. Who would have wanted a Dark Dungeons movie adaptation, only to find out that it's actually completely making fun of the source material, has 100%, it's completely allowed, it's an official movie that is just completely mocking this thing that we've had to put up with for a long time. You know, I never had to deal directly with that kind of thing, but I know some people who have, and it represents something, an ugly side of how people reacted to our hobby at one point, and now we can just watch it in all its absurd glory. So I do plan on watching it. I actually, we could talk about this in a minute. I won't have a game night until sometime in October, possibly November, which means I'll have plenty of time to sit down with at least a couple of people in my gaming group and watch Dark Dungeons the movie.
Oh man, and you're right. It is definitely making fun of the source material, but you could, if you weren't in on it, you could miss that, because this plays the story so straight, like so earnest, and with all the bad, not really too bad acting that we're expecting from Zombie Orpheus. So if you've seen The Gamers or The Gamers 2 or 3 or the Zombie Camp Lake movie they put out, Demon Hunters, I forget the name of that movie. I'm sorry, guys. You get an idea of what you're expecting, but it doesn't let you in on that joke unless you're already in on that joke, which does worry me that like this is going to started getting passed around as like actual like literature for people that are still against games. There's still a few people out there that are like that. This is definitely in our past, but it's not so far in our past that I still remember having to deal with this in my region, and I'm in the middle of the Bible Belt in America, where this was pretty much happening. Even then, it was like starting to be on the downtrend by the time I was getting into gaming. But it's not so long ago that it's before my time. I remember dealing with these accusations, people that honestly thought this, people that tried to get the game club at my high school shut down, things like that. And this little comic chick track actually being used against us back then. So part of me doesn't want like this to start being watched in churches right after God Is Not Dead movie is. Then they're going to watch Dark Dungeons about the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons and the Cthulhu mythos. But it's still worth watching.
You said that this has nothing to do with Pathfinder, but that's not entirely true, Param.
No, it's not. It's not entirely true at all. First, there are Pathfinder books in the movie being used to play the game. Zombie Orpheus has been using Pathfinder as the game it has played pretty much since the second movie. And I will continue to encourage them to do so. And also, one of the characters that is in the game, within the game, is one that we've become very familiar with, Eric Mona's Ostog the Unslain.
Here he is, riding a chimera. Oh, he was riding a chimera. Ostog was slain. He fell. No, he's okay. He's okay, Param. Yeah, it is a cool little cameo. I know Eric Mona in some way contributed to the production of the movie, or I also know that I know they used to be called the Dead Gentlemen. What is the production company called now, Param?
Zombie Orpheus.
Zombie Orpheus. Well, I know those guys have had a Pathfinder connection for a while. They played the gamers at PaizoCon 2. Like, it was a featured event there. And, yeah, so it is fun that Ostog, who we've all kind of taken as our pet Mary Sue for the game, that he makes an appearance in, of all places, Dark Dungeons.
I kind of approve of the fact that our Mary Sue for Pathfinder is a shirtless barbarian.
He is my favorite mini-mate.
Yeah, he's of all the mini-mates, Ostog was the one that originally I was only going to buy Ostog. I was like, I'm not going to fall for this trap. I'm not going to try to collect all 12 of these mini-mates. That's insane, Param. You're not going to use these for anything. You're not even going to open them. And then so, okay, I'm going to buy Ostog. And I'll buy the Lamia Matriarch. Crap. $100 later.
Well, I bought Ileana because I'm a fan of Stalking the Beast, and it's cool that a Pathfinder Tales character got made into a mini-mate. And the fact that she comes with a Resmiran cultist also ties into Stalking the Beast. So, her I appreciated, but yeah, Human Ranger. Less interested.
We've got a comment here from Matt Harris who's saying, "Speak for yourself. My niece won't play Pathfinder due to quote witchcraft."
I'm sorry to hear that, buddy. I know that it's every uncle's goal to play Pathfinder with their nieces and nephews, and that's a bummer. Well, actually, because like I'm from Montreal, and this is basically the San Francisco of Canada. From you lived in it. What advice do you have for someone that's trying to convince someone else that it's not witchcraft? Silly.
Okay. From my experience, I'm not going to get into talking about politics or religion, which very easily this conversation leads down, because those are very entwined in this discussion. But you have to judge the person. Is the person somebody that has an open mind and can accept that what they believe about something is wrong? Now, if they're not a person that can do that at all, it's best that you just agree to disagree and not try to convert them, because once they get into a core level beliefs of this sort are almost impossible to change for somebody that is dedicated to believing in it. So it's best that you just agree to disagree. Now, if somebody is open to the concept, or somebody you know that you can talk to and rationalize with without having to go into clutch thought territory, then your best argument is, hey, this is just a game. It's no more different than Lord of the Rings the movie or Harry Potter the books or anything sort of like that. I can no more learn to do witchcraft than watching hackers lets me break into NASA. I mean, fireballs aren't real. I can't throw them. It would be much more cooler if I could. But yeah. But it's really just a hard thing to get through. I mean, this is an argument I've had. This is a fight I've had. This is an experience I've had to work with. I mean, for the better part of a decade growing up in it. And I've had successes. Honestly, my family, my own family, would not let me play this Dungeons and Dragons evil game when I was little, and then I ended up sort of coming into D&D sideways by playing, other RPGs, because they didn't say D&D on the cover, and I didn't know what D&D was because it's evil, so why would I learn about it? And then to come around the side and says, oh, this game, Final Fantasy game, is really just D&D, with like wicked hair and giant swords. And then I had rational conversations of, hey, here, actually look at the book, see what it's about. See all this numbers? This is math. These are dice. We don't sacrifice goats. Now, that said, choose your books carefully for this argument. Anything written by Neil Spicer, stay away from. The Book of the Damned.
Neil Spicer is the first one you go to. Not Nick Logue.
Oh, Nick Logue would be worse.
Yeah.
I think I've just blacked out Nick Logue. Wrath of the Righteous may seem like a great book. No, not a good book to lead with. I mean, in Pathfinder itself, because it chose to go into adult directions, honestly, one of the reasons that there was a time period when this was so prevalent that D&D took out demons and devils from an entire edition. Second edition doesn't have demons and devils in it because of the negative publicity this whole thing brought on them. This whole Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons group and Eugene Egbert. So, yeah, you don't want to bring the Book of the Damned Volume 1, 2, and 3 to this discussion, not until they first realize that this is a game that you play with miniatures and conversation and dice. So just be careful with that. But this is an argument that sometimes just can't be won. So it's best to just get them to agree to disagree and not to actually infringe upon your right to play games you want to play.
It's true. There is the chance of being like counter-judgmental, of going at someone and just constantly trying to convince them that, and I'm sorry, I'm playing with Ostog, and this is a serious topic. Yeah, kind of convincing them that they are wrong in believing something about something you enjoy. And there does come a point where you just have to say, like, you go believe that over there, I'll believe that over here, and when we get together, we won't even bring it up. Matt's kind of breaking my heart. He kind of mentions that, he doesn't kinda, he mentions that his brother is the one who introduced him into Dungeons & Dragons in the first place. I'm assuming that's the brother. That brother is the father of this niece, and so the fact that this family has this history of Dungeons and Dragons that their niece will not be able to participate in. I mean, yeah, you maybe had some expectations of what your family would be like, and she's kind of thrown you for a curveball, but that's just who your niece ended up being, buddy.
Now, Ryan, what's this about you not gaming for 2 months?
This is the weirdest thing that's ever happened in my gaming group. We are a week-in, week-out gaming group, and nope. So here's what happened. We just finished Carrion Crown, and we just barely finished Carrion Crown in time. It was this past Monday was the last one, And for the next 2 months, we have no set day where everyone will be able to sit down together and play the game together. Part of that is because my friend Jeff will be joining our group, and he just got married on Saturday, and his honeymoon will start in a week or so, so not this week, but within the next couple of weeks, he won't be available. Tina and I are renovating our kitchen, so we're not fighting anyone to make sure people come over because we are pretty much fully committed to that. And so, so we still could have put aside our regular Monday nights, but we're not going to substitute it for a Saturday night game when Saturday should be spent with my dad doing the renovations that he's mostly taken charge of. Tina and I are also going to England in later October, and so that's another couple of weeks that we're not going to be there. So it's just been a lot of small things. Jay is a busy guy. So just about everyone in our group over the next couple of months is missing a week or two, and it just means that, I mean, we could probably fit in a session here or there, but this will be the first session of Rise of the Rune Lords, and we don't want to be like one session here, 3 weeks off, we completely forget about what happened, we completely forget about who these characters are. So we are going to be doing a some kind of weekend getaway at Matt's cottage at some point, and just we're rolling up our characters, we're establishing where they belong in Standpoint. It's just going to be one really long character creation, and then maybe we'll play a Pathfinder Society scenario or play the Harrowing. Otherwise, yeah, I am not going to be GMing Rise of the Rune Lords until early November. And that's weird.
So you're running it, right?
I will be running.
You're still committed to running it.
Yeah. I tried to get out of it, but I'm nervous.
Still, if you can run one, you couldn't have picked a better one to run because, well, first, daggone, you're going to have all the toys. Okay, what toys are you going to run it with?
What toys aren't I going to be running with? I'm going to be doing the Sirenscape full soundtrack. That's what I'm most looking forward to. I've got a couple of key miniatures from the Rise of the Rune Lords miniature set. Otherwise, we're going with the pawns. I've got the face cards. Hopefully they come into play. I've never fully integrated face cards into my game yet. I'm skipping the item cards because I've tried and that just hasn't worked for my groups. Let's see, what else? I've got the super fancy edition, and I borrowed Jeff's copy of the less fancy edition, so I can, mark up the less fancy edition, and then when it's time to play the game, bust out the actual tome, the Karzug's spellbook, or whatever that thing is actually based on.
But no, that's it. It's Karzug's spellbook.
I was assuming. I haven't got the what's the name of the 7-pointed medallion?
Sihedron.
I haven't got the Sihedron replica yet. I'm considering it.
If you get the budget for it, or over a period of time, get 7 of them.
Oh my God! No.
You can hand them out as they find them.
I didn't realize there were. Wait, what? Okay, anyway, no, I won't be doing that. That would have been cool. Maybe I'll get 7 pictures of one. And,
well, I guess you could make one out of cardstock easy enough. It shouldn't be too difficult of a paper craft.
And all my players will get a cardstock one while I'll stand there with a cool metal medallion hanging from my neck, being like, "You want this, don't you?"
Props will help this game, especially if you can get good printouts of the various runes that you'll be reading on. The face cards will be super useful.
I've got the fancy edition. Every handout I need just slides out of the page.
Oh yes, the fancy edition. I can't bring myself to play with my fancy edition.
Oh, I am sure I'm going to destroy it by this book. I have 2 settings, smash or useless.
Oh.
Which is great when I'm doing the kitchen renovations, because I got to smash.
Oh, excellent. Now,
but on top of that, I do have to officially call my Skull and Shackles and Kingmaker group dead. We haven't met in months. Ari has clearly been super busy since she moved on to Ubisoft. And so we're just, at some point I guess I'll just send them an email being like, can I drop by your place and pick up my stuff? Because the Kingdom of Winfrey will no longer be expanding.
Oh.
Well, the biggest disappointment is not getting to play Geralite anymore, because I make a fine princess.
Well, here's a question. I do this all the time, and several of my gaming group do. Do you ever reuse character concepts? Could Geralite be reborn?
I only ever reused Azal, who was my main second edition Dungeons and Dragons character. And when I remade him, it was a reimagining with, like, because Azal was just a typical barbarian guy. His big thing was that he had made claws out of some giant wasp stingers. And so that was his kind of trademark thing. So when I remade him, I used rules from 3.5 that let him use a Warlock's, whatever it was called, Warlock's Blast, Eldritch Blast, only use them as claws. This was something that I found in a Dragon magazine. So I made Arcane Azal. So that's the closest I've ever come to reusing a character. But I don't know. Geraldine is so deeply steeped into the Rise of the Rune Lords that... into Kingmaker. I just... It would feel insincere if I ever brought her up into another campaign.
All right, fair enough. I know that those usually come in like the two extremes. There's the guys who can't play the same character twice, and there's the guys who very commonly play the same character reimagined over and over again. Me and my game group follow into that category, or some of them mix it up. But like for instance, in my current campaign, two of the characters there are characters that got started in a different campaign, but just that campaign never left the ground. So, and since they were tied to each other, it's my character, my brother's character, and we did want to see those characters actually play out some of the storylines we had planned for them. When in the next campaign, they just basically got rewritten, and we using them there to go through some of the things we didn't get the chance to do the first time around. And I know that one of my players, Pat, I don't think he knows how to roll anything but a cleric, but he plays an awesome cleric, like a really awesome cleric. But he always does it like the preachy, judgy kind. He's the one that I said was a cleric of Sarenrae, old regular Sarenrae.
Old regular Sarenrae?
Oh, like Baptist, old regular Baptist. Like there's Baptist, which are pretty conservative religion, and then there's old regular Baptist, which is like very, very conservative version of that sect of Christianity.
Okay.
And it's common in that region.
Okay.
Sorry. But so it happens. But cool. I hate that your games, but does this mean you're going to be looking for more games?
Actually, Anthony Lee posted an interesting comment that I'll probably be looking for some Pathfinder Society online games in the next 2 months. You may be right, Anthony, and usually that's an open invitation to anyone. So keep an eye on our No Direction Facebook page, and I'll probably post up if I'm ever running a game or playing in a game. And there is enough Pathfinder Society going on in the area, and as the Venture Lieutenant, I have to be part of it at some point. Not at some point. I tried to be there for every GM's first game. Which unfortunately I missed this Sunday because of renovations. But yeah, so there will be Pathfinder in my life. That's not going to be the problem. It's just going to be weird not having my own home group getting together every couple of weeks. Like, I will have no idea what Corey and Jay are up to if I don't see them in the next 2 months. And I'm not likely to. At least Kathy I podcast with.
And I hate to follow up sad news with sad news, and me and Ryan have been talking about this for the past couple of weeks, and I'm afraid that this is going to be my very last No Direction that I host from this office.
Sorry,
I'm
straight face.
Yeah. So this has been a nice office. I appreciate it being a good office to us, but we're going to have to let it go because anybody that's been following my Facebook feed, and very soon, once we actually get the trims and everything else lined up, you'll be seeing an article about this. But by the time the next No Direction happens, it will be hosted from the tavern, because the tavern is finally done. It took 3 years, but we finished it.
Now, I've congratulated you prematurely a couple of times, Param. Is it no longer premature to congratulate you for the tavern?
It is no longer premature.
Congratulations, Param. This was an awesome project that I have been super excited to watch unfold, and every time that it's looked like it's stalled out, I've never really wanted to be like, so what's going on with that game room, Param? Your tavern sounded really cool. But now that it's done, I am so glad that you managed to pull this off 100%. I can't wait to see more details, more pictures, and to see you broadcasting from it. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, yeah. The broadcasting is actually the only piece of the puzzle that isn't solved, because the tavern is complete, and we're trying to get the internet to it. Now, worst comes to worst, this weekend I'll be running a really long Ethernet cable to make it happen. But one of the things we're trying to do is get a wireless bridge to kick out there. But yeah, the tavern, it's done. We'll be using it for the first time on Monday, this coming Monday, for my Wrath of the Righteous group. And so I will be glad to be christening it there. There will be pictures of the christening of the tavern. I'm just so glad this thing is done. I mean, 3 years of work on it, and there were delays. There were certainly delays for various reasons, but there was also just a ridiculous amount of work to build something like this and to do it right, because there were several points in this where I was like, I could cut corners now and finish it, but I don't want to cut corners. I wanted to commit to this. And truth be told, it was in usable shape to game in months ago. Like, I could have gamed in it, broadcasted from it months ago. But I didn't want to do it almost done. I wanted to do it done.
Yeah, you don't want to full big free ribbon.
I did not catch a word of that because you sidelined completely.
Right. I asked if you were going to do a full ribbon cutting ceremony.
Oh, I don't know about full ribbon cutting. That would be appropriate, but that would feel a little bit pompous of me. Like maybe break a bottle over the side of it, but part of me just doesn't want to damage the siding, because like every little bit of it now, like I've never been this protective of anything, like not even anything in my collection, but I'm like, okay, now I bought like a whole bunch of those little felt pads to put on all the furniture so that none of it will scratch the floor.
It's a tavern, it'll add character.
I know, but I want to add that character naturally and slowly over the course of ages. But for those of you guys watching us on video, that's why all this stuff's in boxes right now, because this stuff is going out.
Matt Harris asks, will there be a video walkthrough?
Sure. There's no reason not. My Facebook's already got a few videos of like the still in progress shot, so a nice full walkthrough of it once all the decorations are in will be fine. That might wait until I get all the decorations in, which may or may not be Monday when we christen it, because yeah, there's some other there's finished, and then there's finished with the dragon skull, and like I'm gonna get all that stuff up as much as I can. But it's got to the point right now where like all the furniture is sitting in boxes ready to be put together in there because all the construction's done, and that will be what I'll be doing with my time tomorrow. But we put the table in, and there are chairs, and it is ready to roll dice on. Yep.
Ostog bestows upon you his greatest compliment by not slaying you.
Oh, thank you for not slaying me, Ostog, as everybody ever gives you the same compliment, Ostog, for not slaying you either.
I'm worried eventually I'm going to email from Eric Mona telling me to knock this off, because I feel like I'm constantly going to be having cameo appearances by Ostog the Minimate.
Alright. Well, that does it for me on my bantery newsy stuff. Ryan?
Yeah, no, if I've already started to Cylon, it's almost 10:30 here. Let's wrap things up.
Alright. Guys, we'll be right back with a wrap-up.
Wow, that was sultry. Thank you for joining us for another episode of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, you know what, Param? I don't actually have any fresh shout-outs. There's a couple of Kickstarters I've been keeping my eye on. There's the Varentia Codex, which will be coming out, I believe, in association with Rogue Genius Games, and just has a ton of freelancers working on it. It's going to be a whole new campaign setting with just a a series of new books. It includes contributions from Owen Casey Stevens, and I believe I saw, Stephen Radley McFarlane. So that's a couple of Paizo staffers will be working on this in some capacity. Regular freelancers for Paizo, like Clinton J. Boomer and Savannah Broadway, will be helping out. Oh, Chris Self. You know what? I'm just going to post a link in the show notes to all the people that are in some way tied to the Varanthia Codex. The Kickstarter starts on, I believe, the 5th. And so it isn't quite live yet, but it will be starting in the next couple of days. And you can be sure that we will post up a link to it on our Facebook page. And I'll see if I can get an interview with whoever's in charge of this entire team. I know who's been contacting me about it. I don't know what his capacity is in it. It seems like an entire chunk of... It's almost like they're designing the 5th year of the world with the number of compatible products that they're releasing along with it.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, everyone should check out Pirate Loot, because I want my 5 or 6 player expansion, and I kind of want my robot spin-off.
Yeah. It looks like a very fun game, and it looks like I'll be putting this on the shelf right next to other very fun light games like Munchkin, Bears, and Gloom. I wanted to shout out to another Kickstarter project. I hate to shout out to just a bunch of Kickstarter projects, but this one I really just want to see happen, and that is the Cantrips Kickstarter project. Have you seen this one, Ryan?
Yes, I have.
Yes. It describes itself as 4 aspiring adventurers in the kingdom of Los Angeles quest for their big break, trying to stay ahead of orcs and next month's rent. This is a urban fantasy sitcom with D&D-like characters in it. I was really impressed with the production quality of the trailer they have that you can watch on the Kickstarter page, and they actually have some pretty decent special effects on it too. So I don't know what to expect from this. Hope how long it'll be, how successful it'll be. They're almost funded with 14 days to go. They still need a couple of grand to kick over their initial goal. But it looks like a cool thing. So go check it out. I'm not putting my stamp of approval on it because, that's kind of dangerous to do anymore with Kickstarters. But it's definitely a fun watch, if for no other reason than the trailer, to see for yourself. And I really hope they succeed, because I hope this is as awesome as it could be.
And I, of course, want to thank everybody that contributed questions to our interview with Jason Bulmahn, and I want to thank Jason Bulmahn for joining us tonight, and Jenny Bendel and Kyle Elliott for helping coordinate this interview. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello Jr.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perrin.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction. Also, there is a feat in the Advanced Class Guide that gives everyone who takes it no direction as a spell-like ability.
Cool. Does that mean we're required to take that in all our characters?
Yes, every single character we play from now on.
All right, guys. It's been fun. Anything we got to do before I kill the feed, Ryan?
Matt Harris says to roll a giant foam D20 through the door.
Oh, man. I have one that's like this big, and I have the inflatable one that's like this big. Which one do you think is appropriate?
I think the foam one. It's a better roll.
Oh, okay, yeah, better roll. Also, when you do throw rune giants, you use the foam D20.
Okay. Just to represent the massiveness of them?
Yes.
Okay.
If rune giants played right, the player should fear them, quake in their boots. Never mind. All right, guys, I'm killing the feed. Later.
Bye, feed. Bye, guys.